Hi. I am happy to be here. Hope you hear me. I'm happy to see you here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the invitation. I'm kind of terrified. I'm a bit nervous. You are at exactly the time and place where you should be. You can see already fires going on. So uh, you have your time. We are running a bit late, but it shouldn't affect you. You can be a bit late. That's okay. Thank you very much, Artem, for inviting me here. I'm happy to have so many participants listening to me. I see some familiar names. For me, it's a big honor, really, today. For me, it's difficult to start. It's the first time I take part in this conference, and all those days I've been listening here to the speakers who are actually my tutors. So the level is so high, and I'm kind of nervous to be among those people, but I'll be doing my best right now. So I'll try to quickly introduce myself. My name is Simonova Alesia. I had the program dedicated to narrative practices, and we actually teach people how to use the new approach. Sometimes I see how people who join the course, they really want to change other people, but they actually change themselves. They find some new resources, new energy, they have more hopes, and this influences directly their work. It's so great that every person joining the course reinvents himself or herself and finds the dignity. This is why I believe it's so important. And narrative practices can be used in some events and in some group team work. So we do the part of the consultancy, but it is something more than just a consultancy. We don't do the intervention without explanations. And the very center of our focus is the way people engage, is the way people talk about their problems. So through the stories, we understand how people come to particular decisions and particular opinions in their lives. The practitioner actually is a kind of a witness, as a kind of a person who works like an anthropologist, just studying the story. People, and they share the way they react on the problem, the way they confront the problem. This is quite important. And usually people show that their stories show that they are bigger than the story, bigger than the problem. They can easily confront it and be the winner. We see how people, through the stories, they show the way they got released from the prison of their problem. Narrative practices can be used in individual work, in team work, and the most important thing that people, while using those practices, they get rid of those uh, the language that diminishes them, They actually start to talk about themselves as if people with dignity, really, people who have knowledge, skills, competences, who can help, who can cherish, and it's really wonderful. One of my colleagues just recently said that now she can do without the fear, even having her fears, she now can do not withstanding the problems. When people talk in this way, when you talk in this way, it really influences. She also told me that every time she dedicates time to her project, even when she has fears, she feels proud about herself. Such talks with clients are absolutely amazing. When people talk like that, they're not focused on the problem. They are focused on something bigger. There is the real poetry in what they say, the real beauty, and it also provokes the emotional response from those who listen. Just yesterday, I had a group work. Those people were new to the narrative practices, and they were witnessing the narrative conversation, and they were saying that while listening, they had the goosebumps, uh, and they were amazed and excited, and they wanted to think differently about their lives, about themselves. So people, the important thing is not only to tell the story, to provoke the story, to listen. Then I witness such stories. I see how the ego of the people changes. How I want to really promote such approach. How I want to support those people. So today we're talking about the narrative practices that can be of great help to everyone because the world is at the edge of a catastrophe now. I believe everyone who joined this webinar, so we are, if we would be in one circle and if we would share the experience of this month or last year, will surely share lots of pain and anxiety about the world. I believe many of us are haunted by the news, by nightmares, by tragedies that we witness. We see that the world brings lots of fears, lots of pain upon us, but it means the way we respond to all those fears just means that we are people, we are emotional. But it's hard to acknowledge those emotions. We just feel useless, we feel not needed. Let's see, there are so many crises right now. There's no resources, growing insecurity, struggle, migration, vulnerability, cybersecurity is actually not security anymore. Everything, uh, all those things actually, they lead to the growing insecurity. And for every particular human being, that's painful. But actually, those stories that we have, those insecurities that we feel, actually, we are not alone in them. This is something that can unite us. But actually, we just are so tense and we don't share, as if we are not united by our common pain, by our common grief. And this only promotes our separation. So this is why we need those practices that will help us to acknowledge our pain, our emotions. No, switch to the second slide. So you can also navigate the slides, but I will help in case needed. So when we talk about people, we can just feel better about each other. I believe the whole conference is actually dedicated to the bridge building, about strengthening our communication. And today I'll be talking about how these narrative uh, practices can be used. When we have the trauma, the collective trauma, we should also work collectively in order to fight it. And there are the possibilities um, for that. We have rituals and ceremonies. This is why collective practices are so important. I believe we all have rituals. We all have some family traditions that you know from the very child. So let's imagine. I will try to recollect my traditions. You can also share in the chat. What traditions do you have in family or maybe in your culture? Those probably can be not the family traditions, but some traditions you have in your company and so on. So maybe those are just visits to friends, or maybe this is the time when you go to your grandmother, or you maybe particularly love your meetings with friends, or you go to hammam together with some of your friends, or you just love the early meetings at the company, then you all share uh, how you spend the weekend, or what are the rituals that you have. So all those situations where you had some joint activities that actually make you feel happy. So the traditions, rituals, we all have them. We are all incorporated in our daily life. It's not only about family, it's about culture, about the work. We celebrate anniversaries, we celebrate marriages. We have some traditional foods, for example, for certain events. This is everything that actually makes our life unique. It repeats, but it has its particular structure, and those rituals are antidotes in case of some crises. The traumas, the bad experiences, they actually shatter the story, your experience. And the rituals help to keep going. The problems separate, but traditions they unite. This is our common experience. Usually, when you experience trauma, you feel that the life is no longer useful and needed. But through traditions, you share news, you share this feeling of connection. Rituals are something that create a kind of a framework for you to navigate in life. For all of your changes, they help to support you, even when the times are rough and you live in turmoil. Rituals help to overcome losses. Even the traditions related to the some brief events, like when a person passes away, those traditions also help us to overcome grief. For us, it's always for a group, it's a visibility to find the roots, to find the firm ground, to find some stability, and to connect to past values, to see that there is some continuity of experience. With the rituals, we feel less terrified, we feel less nervous, and we feel that there is more predictability about life because we feel like they are part of some heritage. This brings us to the feeling of community, cohesion, love and support, and pride and connection. And when we have those feelings, uh, we feel much better. This is why practitioners decided to use those rituals and common traditions in narrative practices because uh, those experiences shared of great importance, as I already told you. They are quite emotional, um, and also those rituals, they they are inherently connected with some exchange of gifts, exchange of some congratulations, some warmth, and this is all we use in narrative practice. For example, we also had the sessions where we shared the food of our predecessors. Also, we sang songs, we invented songs. Sometimes we share stories about our religions. Every year, for example, we imagine our own religions for every one of us, and when we share our ideas. And all those practices, something unique happens. We exchanged our ideas on how to overcome some difficult situations, and also we try to understand the possibilities that other people share. One time we also had the play in one school group where we had teachers, pupils, and zombies. Um, I had also absolutely unique ceremony. Um, uh, there was the group of women who had problems with childbirth, and they created this special ceremony of um, dedicated to the overcoming of those problems. They even called the ceremony the hatching of the eggs, because we wanted to have some ritual which would help them to overcome the problems related to the childbirth, and also find some inspiration to not lose hope. And this was a totally unique experience. And you know, actually, those women united in that group, they actually managed finally to have kids, and one of them, and several women there, they became mothers, and we were absolutely sure that for the psychological situation, those group therapies, those group practices were very useful. The rituals that they invented themselves, they helped them to calm down and to find some strength inside them. So when we share rituals, we don't share the stress that we feel, but we share some possibilities of overcoming it. We also work a lot with metaphors. Uh, Metaphor is etymologically from Greek, that actually means that we carry something through something, and metaphors actually may help us from the use of symbols and some indirect analogies to carry out to also to bring new senses, new meanings. And this is why these metaphors help in the narrative practices as well. Through metaphor, it's easy to bring your experience to make it understandable to other people, because we all have imagination. We always create the image of a person, the associations. I believe that in every culture, the imagery can be different, but there is something that unites people from different cultures. For example, the image of a tree. This is very understandable. The image of a tree is always connected with our position in the family. Um, we all know about genealogical tree. We also know this imagery of a tree is an image of something stable but developing, something beautiful, something ever changing but still staying the same. So the imagery of a tree is absolutely unique. One of the projects what I carry out is uh, the journal. One of my students, she has the diary, and in her diary, she photos the tree near her, and it helped her those changes in the tree that she um, focused on. It helped her to understand the life circle, the changes. She became calmer. I believe in all of the traditional practices. There are some traditions linked with trees in Slavic cultures for sure, but I believe that's universal for all different nationalities and ethnicities. So, the tree is really linked with the um, lots of images, with symbols, with metaphors. There are images that actually influence me a lot. For example, the big tree of the world. The roots are somewhere in the underworld. The trunk uh, is the whole humankind, and the branches. This is our aspirations going to the world of gods. This is the imagery we can find in ancient India, in the ancient Arab world, also in the ancient cultures of the Central East and Middle East. And for many people, this imagery is very understandable, and uh, this analog with a tree is really powerful. And for many people, it helps to feel connected with the soil that you have under your feet and find some balance. And I'll try to show how we can use the tree of life methodology. This methodology was firstly created in Zimbabwe to help children who lost their parents due to AIDS. This methodology is actively used for all people who lost their dear and near ones due to some conflicts or natural disasters, or maybe also due to military conflicts. Also, this methodology can be used in case of some conflicts within the company, within the community, when some group of people actually experience the common grievance and common problem. And there was something that actually made them lose all the support in their life. So this is a methodology that can be used when you need to rethink the crisis, when something difficult happens and we want to find the new beginning, and we need to identify the problems that we have. This is where we need this collective practice. As already said, the situation in Zimbabwe provoked the creation of methodology. Kids couldn't really speak about the trauma, about the loss that they had experienced, and they were asked to talk about their problem, but they were not ready. They needed some safe space to reconnect with themselves first. And the story is actually very powerful. You can read about it. Here on this slide, you see the photo of Madame Kuba. She was the author of this methodology. And without her, we wouldn't have this wonderful methodology. And near her we see David Attenborough, who is one of the top narrative practitioners. He's from Australia. Our organization also had the possibility to invite Madame Kazala to our organization in Moscow, and she shared the methodology or some secrets that she had about it and the experience that she gained. So today I'll be talking about the experience that she shared and also the experience that we've gathered. And we also work with our European colleagues who are wonderful narrative practitioners. So we combine the efforts of top professionals in order to make the best use of it. So now I will try to show you four main parts of this methodology. First, we help our participants to draw the tree of life and to describe their stories through this matter for all the tree. We can work individually, but we encourage the work in small groups, even if the work is carried out online, because it encourages the listening. The second stage is the so-called the forest of life, when we unite all of those trees so that we can have a better context, a better perspective, better understanding of the group, um, so that we could really um, witness this forest of trees, different stories. The next stage, we discuss what happens when the storm comes to the forest, when the problems try to uh, damage the trees. And we discuss what they can do, what's possible. And when we discuss the stories that we've listened to, and we discussed the why they influenced all the participants. And now I'll try to give more details about every stage of this methodology. So let's stay on this slide. So first we start, as I already said, with the tree. So those are the examples of the trees where people do, try and draw their trees. Usually have a very large piece of paper so that the person um, had the space and no limitations. Or sometimes have very large piece of papers, almost of the same height as a person, because really this work needs space. We want to have this large paper without limits. If we work online, we ask in advance for a person to find a proper piece of paper, the large one. What happens in the very beginning? We have a group. We have the moderator for every group and the facilitator. In every group, we need the moderator to support every small group during the whole process. When we unite at the very beginning, the facilitator sets the main framework. For example, facilitator shows how we can draw a tree, and the facilitator can even start to draw his or her own tree, maybe very badly, because many people are afraid to draw a tree because we are afraid that it won't be nice enough. And the facilitator starts telling the story so that every person would understand that it's not something frightful. Also, the facilitator shows that every person has its own right to stop the story and share as much as possible, as much as wanted. So we draw step by step from the roots up to the fruits. And the facilitator also does it step by step, usually also on some large piece of paper, so that everyone would see the tree. And it's very important for facilitator to share sincerely. Remember how I got this understanding. You also need to be very transparent, very sincere and open. Then our colleague from Denmark, Hannah Robbenhagen, came to us. She's a top practitioner in narrative practices, and she helped us to conclude narrative practices. We were working with school children of about 13, 15. We had lots of different situations, pleasant and unpleasant. We were working together for about 2 months. We had different games, simulations. We tried to teach them how they can communicate with each other, how they can build bridges. And the majority of our activities were dedicated to the communication. And we thought that we've reached the top of sincerity in our group. But I remember when Hannah came, she was drawing the roots of a tree. She was showing how she is doing it, and she was sharing her story. And she told that, well, so casually she was speaking. Well, she was saying, uh, those roots are actually people that influenced me, those are places that influenced me. And I have one important person in my life. This is my grandmother. And she told the story of her grandmother. Her grandmother experienced the violence, sexual violence in a very early age, and she taught her granddaughters and her granddaughters how they should be coming back home late at night, and she was sharing jokes and I remember it was so eye-opening. I was looking at our teenagers in the group, and they were so open to this experience. They were quite okay. She was talking about this experience as something that was already well processed by herself, and she was talking so nonchalantly, casually, and kids started sharing stories but I wasn't thinking we would be able to share so openly. When we work step by step, as already mentioned. At first, we, as already said, the facilitator shares a story about the roots. Roots, this is something um, what actually we grow from, what nourishes us. Every tree has the roots that bring the nutrients to the tree. And we are just like trees. We have those sources for energy for our life, something that makes us grow, something that brings us forward. In organization, uh, sometimes mention some mentors, some tutors, or maybe they mention some programs that influenced them and made an impact. We also mention books that also those can be very personal routes, so to say. Maybe some places, maybe films, some experiences. Maybe that's the particular place on earth that is the most powerful for you. Or there are some moments in life that actually bring energy and make you go forward and not quit. And here also participants can join and share. The facilitator can ask some additional questions. Here in the very beginning, people do the very first attempts in narration, and you need to give space to those stories. This stage is usually the longest because you need time for people to feel safe, to feel relaxed, to feel ready to tell the story. Collective practice, this tree of life. This is a practice that can be like 3 hours, or it can last for 3 weeks. Um, on the second stage, well, um, there's always the same circle. Facilitator talks, then people share in the groups when we discuss, and when we go to the next stage. Once again, the facilitator talks about the soil of the tree, what surrounds the facilitator, what influences. People not only talking, they also draw. For some people, sometimes it's easier just to draw, to think, I want to share. For some, this can be different. They can do both things at the same time. Oh, next, we speak about the trunk. What are the actions, the skills, and values, um, what are useful uh, for our lives? Uh, Something that is so makes us feel important. And for facilitators, it's important maybe to find some skills that actually facilitator can see and people and mention those skills. The facilitator can remind, well, I that he or she saw something, some values, some skills in this particular person. And this, if this is a group of people who know each other, we can also ask other participants to tell more about this particular person, to help the person to see uh, what are the parts of the trunk of this particular person. And usually people share, they tell that this particular person knows this and that, they're so good at this and that. And this actually boosts the dignity of the person. So we go so step by step from those nourishing roots and soil to the trunk, that is actually the main part of our life. And we go further and further, higher and higher. And sometimes the branches actually becoming so naturally. People start to share their dreams, their hopes quite naturally. They tell about the possibilities that they would like to have. Then the person draws a trunk and then starts to draw the branches. You can ask the person how the person sees this connection between those dreams, hopes, or desires, they are connected with some particular parts of of a trunk, of the roots, of the soil. It actually helps to build the belief, the active hope, so to say. A person would see this connection of the roots, of the trunk, and the branches. For example, there are many people who dream of some sporting achievements, or some just they dream of doing something, and they forget that they actually have all the possibilities. They are in their trunk. And then they discuss also beliefs. Those are people and things that can help a particular person to fulfill a dream, to make the branches become stronger. And here we discuss why a particular person can influence this desire, this hope. We share why the people are important, why you remember about particular people in your life, why we are needed. We um, just acknowledge once again the importance of the relationships between people. And then at the later stages, we discuss gifts. Well, many people, when they discuss this part of lives, when they share why a particular person is important, um, they immediately start saying that this particular person is important because she told me this and that, she shared this and that. So this is a gift. We immediately draw a flower near the sleeve to see how many gifts you actually have. And we also remember about the fruits we need to see to make people understand that sometimes they are the gift makers, but they have the special gifts for the people, the gift of time, the gift of advice, and many others, the kindness. The trees then are very different. Sometimes they are very, very peculiar. Many people draw very symmetric trees, but sometimes you can see here some of them are very unusual. We have unusual colors, and they are not really like the natural trees. This is exactly the imagery. Sometimes people then add trees, step when we discuss things. The main focus here is the future. We try to look into the future, but connected with the past, with the roots. And I would say it's always about the story, but not about the presentation. So it's not about some self or representation, but this is the creation of the common space, the space of trust. The more people share, the more people are willing to share. And this is the fundament for the next part of our work when we discuss the idea of a forest of the trees. Because we need, but by the time we need the people to feel the trust, to feel the safety. So when people finish their drawings, we ask people to connect with trees, maybe on the wall, maybe on the carpet, on the floor. You can see it in the pictures, and we see wonderful forest. A forest that is full of trees that are different. And here we work in the common circle, and we ask people to share about something about the peculiarities of trees. And usually those are stories that are already composed from those stories that were shared in a smaller circle. And those usually are the stories not about pain, not about problems, but about the dignity, about the possibilities. Many people actually, by this time, they are ready to share. They want to discuss. They are willing to participate. For me, this forest of trees is so wonderful because those branches connect. They create a nice shadow where you can actually peacefully rest. And everyone feels it, actually, that those trees are connected. They are together in all their differences. This is a kind of a ritual that make people connected, make them feel united, and at the same time make they understand that we are all different. Then the facilitator asks questions. Those are questions um, that make people talk about the possibilities to overcome obstacles. And in order to have um, some shared motivation, we ask everyone to take the stickers and write some kind words to the tree of every person. And the facilitator can sum up this part of the work so that everyone would see that trees are different, but they have they have large trunks, they have roots, and we try and discuss what's common among the trees. And when we try to discuss what's common among the participants, it's usually very nonchalant discussion. And usually we end the day here or make some large break for lunch or large coffee break. This part enables us to create a safe space. But after this, when we created this safe space, we evoke the stories of trauma. The important thing for us is to reflect on the stories, not to blame, and not to re-traumatize people sharing the stories. So together, once again, we discuss the idea that those trees are beautiful, but are they safe? Everything can be happening with a tree. It can be just cut, it can die, it can be infected, it can be ruined by the storm. And usually when we ask people, is a tree to blame? And they say, no, surely. And we try to make this analog that people sometimes are also threatened. There are stresses, there are lots of crises, and people start to share all these possible threats for a person. And we going from those general ideas of pain, of stress, of crisis, of threat, to something very concrete. And this helps us then to speak without the shame, without blame. People connect and they ready to be speaking freely. And when we ask people, when they share, if a person is to blame in this particular case, no, no. They understand, no, actually, they are not to blame. They shouldn't be blaming themselves, and we just need to carry on. And the next part is the discussion of the tree once again. What helps the tree to survive, to stay? And step by step, we try to make people see that sometimes when they think that we have no power over a situation, it's actually not really so. We have the large trunk, we have the roots, we have the leaves that can help take care of our branches. And people are very attentive at this very moment because they understand that they can have a similar experience, maybe an absolutely different experience. The main thing is that people understand the emotion, and then understand that basically we are all the same trees that can be threatened, that need to have some techniques, need to have some instruments to overcome. And the main thing is that at the very we maybe continue the kind of a ritual that we already had, and maybe we can sing the song together where we create a special ritual for this particular group that kind of that can help to acknowledge all the confessions, all the stories that were shared. And we also give a certificate to everyone where we write that this particular person has this and that skills, this competences, this possibilities, and this particular person wants to do this and believes that uh, those and those methods can help us to overcome problems. This is something for a person to um, to end the ritual, to end this practice, go back to the real life, but with some results, with some new knowledge. For people, that's a possibility to kind of restart. After this work with Tree of Life, they feel a bit more recovered. We were together, we were discussing uh, different traumatic issues. Um, but at the end of the session, we see some real perspectives. We can formulate the initiatives. We are ready to communicate differently after the end of this practice. And I believe this is what is brilliant about it, because it makes a difference afterwards. People feel more solidarity and compassion towards each other. So now I believe that's the end of my speech, and I give the floor back to Artem. Unfortunately, I needed uh, to show you that we are running out of time. Thank you very much, Alessia. Those files are all for you. Please write down all your emotions. Xenia wrote in the chat, but it's so smooth, so nice. Actually, I was fighting with myself. I was so unwilling to stop you because it was so great to listen to you. Are there if there are any questions? Uh, well, please, Alyssa, look for those questions in the chat and stay with us to answer them. But I will ask you one last question. So, by joining us here today, you showed that we can build bridges. But what is another meaning, another message you want to share with us that you believe can make us build bridges? Well, this is the message that I always share with all the people I work with. The most important thing are the people. I was talking about the structure, about practice, about methodology, but actually, all the practices, uh, all events, every time they are different because people are different. But every time that's a wow effect because the main in our life are the people. If you allow people to feel that dignity, to feel honor, if you give them space, a safe space, you see the magic happen. It's always a kind of a magic and wonderful transformation. So the main thing are the people. Uh, we see words of appreciation. Uh, well, also some words of thanks to the interpreters. Alessa, thank you very much for being with us here today. Thank you for inviting me. I was happy to be part of this wonderful conference.